Labor's 2035 target is not in line with the science of protecting the people and places we love. It's not ambitious enough to allow us to go to the world stage and to push the rest of the world, to push big emitters to do better. Because we know what's at stake. We've seen in the National Climate Risk Assessment just what climate change is going to do to our country, is going to do to our communities, the ocean that we love, the reefs that we love, the bushland that we love, the native species that make this continent so incredible. And yet we've got a government that isn't listening to the science. They're not listening to the over 500 businesses that have said 75% by 2035 is the right way to go. It's the right level of ambition. And the Cabinet's not even listening to Minister Bowen when he says the cost of inaction will always outweigh the cost of action. We've got a climate risk assessment, the Minister who knows this so intimately saying the cost of inaction will always outweigh the cost of action, and then we have a Prime Minister and a Cabinet that lowballs it, that goes low. That range of 62 to 70% is not ambitious. It's not in line with the science. And I think for many people who voted for Labor, assuming that they would provide ambition when it comes to climate, they'll be bitterly disappointed if they weren't already after the approval of things like the North West Shelf and the extension of the other 30 or so fossil fuel projects. So there's a lot of work to do in this country when it comes to climate change, and increasingly, as I'm in here, I think the only way we're going to change politics in this country is through community-backed independence, and having more and more people who come in here who are willing to, one, listen to their community, and two, listen to experts. Take your targets on climate change from climate scientists. And so I'm urging people, get involved with your local community-backed independent. Donate, find a way to be involved. And if there isn't one, be the change you want to see. Start a group. Start looking for a candidate ahead of the next election, because there is so much at stake as a country, and we have to find a way forward. We can't give up on this. We have to keep fighting and keep pushing the Labor Party, the major parties, to take our future seriously.
Do you believe that decision to go for a range as opposed to a single figure is very much a compromise that's trying to please everyone, but ultimately does fall short? And in its current form, would you be comfortable giving legislative support to this target if it is legislated?
My concern is that a range feigns ambition for the top end, 70%, but we know what they're aiming for. You look at 43% that was legislated as a floor, and it seems like we're just maybe going to scrape 43%. So it's not in line with the science, and we're dealing with atmospheric physics here. Climate change is something we should be listening to climate scientists on, and you can't tell me that it's too hard. We have 500 businesses here in this country saying 75% by 2035 is what we should have landed on, and they've ignored that.
What do you make of the increased investments in the Net Zero Fund, the $2 billion for the Clean Energy Finance Corporation? Those sort of the things that the government needs to be doing to get to those sort of targets that you want?
We're gonna need to see big investment in making these changes, but as we've seen from the climate risk assessment, all the work that we do now on mitigation, on actually transitioning our economy, and the work we do on building resilience and adapting to climate change will be well worth it, will pay off in the long term. And so we have to be focused on those things now, and finding ways to unlock capital and to ensure that Australians across the country can benefit from this transition. As we're seeing with solar and batteries, that there's actually an opportunity in all of this if we have the guts, if we have the moral courage to say, this is our chance as a generation. You look back at other changes that have happened and the kind of grit and determination it took. They weren't settling for a 62 to 70%. They were saying, we're going big here, and I was hoping that the government was going to do the same.
Dave, what do you make of the government's response to the UN inquiry finding Israel's conducting genocide in Gaza? They've been mostly silent. We haven't heard from the Prime Minister and Senator Wong put out a statement that's roughly in line with what they've been saying. What would you like to see?
I think a lot of this comes down to moral courage. Actually being willing to call it how it is, to do what is actually necessary, rather than to bowing to vested interests, to not wanting to upset allies. We have an obligation under the Genocide Convention to take action, and I don't think we're seeing that from our government. And I think the longer this drags on, the more and more people are going to be looking at our government and saying, well, what are you actually doing? Why aren't you listening to experts? Why aren't you acting?
Just back on climate, the CCA initially pitched up a 65 to 75% range. It seems Treasury only modelled the low end of that 65%. Are there unanswered questions as to how we've ended up with this compromise, and will you be pushing the government for those in estimates, in other forums as well, for a briefing, for some sort of explanation as to how that, more, ambitious ambition, lack of a better word, has been diminished over the past few weeks?
I think it was Ursula Le Guin said that no one who says "I told you so" ever was or ever will be a hero. That is not an option here. We have to continue to push them for more ambition. And so, I'll be exploring all those avenues to actually work out how do we have a government where you have climate scientists and even a big chunk of businesses in Australia saying 75% by 2035, and you land on 62 to 70%, which puts us all at risk. It doesn't allow us to go to COP, go to the UN and say we are leading the way on climate change, and we want you all to do the same. We're just kind of middle of the pack and happy to be there given what's at stake. This is about the people and places we love. This is about even the sports we love. You look at summer cricket, you read the National Climate Risk Assessment, very unlikely that we're going to be enjoying full seasons of summer cricket in the future.
On that, there is some funding set aside here to help sports clubs, community clubs deal with some of that mitigation. Is that welcome, that there's an approach that's looking beyond sort of the top level? What do you think could be the benefit of that?
It's all welcome. If you look at the quantum of funding that experts are saying we need to be spending when it comes to adaptation, we're spending a fraction of that. And we know every dollar we spend now is going to save us a huge amount of not just money but pain in the future. So that sort of work is really important. And I applaud a number of athletes, Pat Cummins and others, who really have been leading this conversation and saying this isn't just about abstract things. This is about the sports that we love. So yes, welcome that, but that's no substitute for an ambitious, not even ambitious, just a science-aligned target.
That's everything. Cool.
Thanks everyone. Cheers.
Sure.